Alright, y'all. So it's kind of like a weird bipolar day in Portland between sun and rain, and I drank way too much coffee and have spent a lot of today being mad at someone inside my head. So I'm going to talk to you about attraction because that always cheers me up. My friend Amy was telling me that there's this difference between projection and true attraction that's actually molecular. Like, actually, at a chemical level, when we're attracted to someone, we create molecular bonds between our pheromones and our chemistry and their chemistry that are a true bond that actually connect, versus when we're projecting, that bridge doesn't necessarily build between our biochemistry and theirs. And this reminded me of one of my favorite sayings, which is just it's never just you, right? Like, if you're thinking about someone all the time, if you find someone really attractive, if you feel like someone's flirting with you, if it's true attraction instead of projection, it's never just you, and they're feeling it too. And I have a little formula for this about projection. You know, I think sometimes when we're really attracted to someone, when we see someone and we're drawn to them, there's something that we want. You know, there's something that they have that we're yearning, reaching, longing for out to them. And the difference for me between when you can tell something is projection versus attraction is if you do end up hooking up with them, if we're talking about romance, or you end up, whatever, taking a class from them or becoming friends with them, if you end up getting that connection and you still don't feel like you've gotten that thing, like if you're like, this person is just so, whatever, cool, you know, and you're like, actually, fuck them, and you still don't feel like you got to know them or you got that like essence of coolness inside them, then you're probably projecting. But if you see someone and you're just like, oh my God, they're so cool, and you hook up with them or you have whatever relationship with them, and then you actually get to know why they're cool and get to know that coolness even better, and then things start to grow and things start to deepen and move beyond just you thinking they're cool into you finding these other qualities and aspects of them that you like, that's probably true attraction. But something that I think we don't talk about enough when we talk about projection is we make it sound like it's just this really like negative thing, and then in our classic thing that we do in Western society, we make it be the individual's fault, as opposed to understanding that we're actually encouraged to project onto each other by the culture, and that this might be an inherent function of consciousness. And because we see it as kind of a negative thing that's like your individual fault that you need to get over by, you know, accelerating your evolution or some bullshit like that, is that there's actually reciprocal projection. You know, that sometimes it actually feels really good to be projected onto. And sometimes the other person really likes what you're projecting onto them and wants to be projected onto in that way. This touches on one of my other principles of attraction, which is just that if you're into someone, most of the things they do feel good. And if you're not into someone, most of the things they do don't feel good. So if you're into someone and you find that they're projecting onto you qualities of being super cool, you're going to be like, oh my God, they think I'm cool. And like, oh my God, I think I'm cool. And if you're not into someone, I've had this experience before where someone's projecting something onto you and either it doesn't feel right what they're projecting, it doesn't feel like it's touching at least some grain of truth inside you, and you also don't like and aren't attracted to the person who's projecting onto you, it just feels so fucking uncomfortable. It's just like, I get this feeling when I've been in those situations where I don't feel seen and I don't feel like the person is relating to me, and I don't feel like I know how to act in that situation, and then I find myself saying a bunch of weird things that aren't grounded in what's been verbally said, but which I'm just picking up from the field of things, like, I don't know if I can be what you want me to be. I'm not all that great. But there are these situations, these rare and special situations where I think something happens that's almost like a symbiotic projection, where it's like I'm projecting this onto you and you like me, and you also like that quality of yourself that I'm projecting, and you're projecting onto me, and I also like that quality of myself that you're projecting onto me. You know, projections usually are grounded in there's something there. It might just be like a millionth of 1%, but there's something. And if that something is something you like about yourself, then it might feel good when someone is seeing that in you and reflecting it in you. And there's this symbiotic growth period during this particular kind of projection where it could almost be like empowering that part of yourself. You know, like maybe I don't as much think of myself as cool. And so you seeing that in me is like, oh my God, you think I'm cool. And then I get to experience that part of myself more through your eyes and more in proximity of our relationship. But then this can kind of lead into roles, right? And the thing about roles, and I guess the thing about this sort of symbiotic projection, is it sort of works until it doesn't. I really fundamentally believe that there is this part of our soul that longs for wholeness. So I might like being in my role for a while. I might like living more fully and expressively the qualities that you're seeing in me. But if it becomes limiting, if we become stuck in these roles and relationships, or if the upholding your projection of me happens at the sacrifice of a different part of me, then there's only so long that can be comfortable. There's going to be a point where it stops working, and that desire for wholeness, that desire for growth and change is going to come through. You know, I had this last relationship that I think was largely based on symbiotic projection. And when it came time to switch roles, and when it became time to be more than those projections and to be other, maybe less desirable qualities than those projections, the entire relationship system fell apart. And it was really painful to kind of look back and understand ways in which I had been complicit in wanting to be what the other person projected onto me, and then also having to be really honest about how hard it was when I started to realize that that wasn't working for me to actually make space for myself to be different in that relationship. And ultimately it fell apart because the other person didn't want me to be different, and because I had so ingrained those patterns of who I was to that person that breaking out of them and being something new was so hard. So again, like with a lot of these things, it's just good to be aware of. You know, this kind of ties into what we were talking about last week, which is not only getting to know your negative judgments, but getting to know your positive judgments about another person, because right there might be the seeds of what you're projecting. And it's just good to have on your radar so that you can both like be consciously choose to embody more of those qualities, and also be aware that at some point you're going to want to be more than those qualities. And then this is the last thing that I've been thinking about today in terms of attraction. And this was inspired by my friend Sam, who for a really long time she really wanted to be with someone, and then she found someone, and she found someone amazing, and they're really in love, and they have this beautiful relationship where even their fights are productive. And what she was saying to me is that part of us that longs for a relationship, that part of us that longs for someone, you know, maybe someone who has these qualities or those qualities, or is like this or like that, that part of us that is reaching, yearning, longing, desiring, so painfully wanting a relationship, a person, a physical experience, whatever it is really different than the part of us that actually turns on when we meet someone. You know, like for her, the part of her that for many, many months just like thirstily and hungrily, desperately desired to be with someone was a completely different part of her person than the one that came out when she actually met this guy and actually liked him, and her chemistry reached to his chemistry, and they made this match together. And her appreciator and her love came to bathe and caress and get to know the different specific parts of him. And I really like these ideas that these are two different parts of who we are. We have this almost like existential desire and longing in us for a wide variety of things that we seek to find in love, intimacy, sex, and relationship. And then we have this other part of us that comes out and is called forth from another person that actually loves and appreciates them for their specificity. I guess it's just helpful for me that when that desire comes up in me, that desire for someone or something or some type of intimacy or physical sharing or experience, or even when I get in my like law of attraction modes and I think about like attracting a partner to me or something, it's just so helpful to remember that that wanting place is really different than the lover place inside me. Why is that so helpful? I think because that wanting place for me is also where a lot of my addictive tendencies come in. A lot of where I can not be listening to myself and get into the dangers of projecting, where I find myself just kind of like throwing at someone, wanting something from them, and feeling so incredibly unsatisfied. And that's that self-perpetuating cycle that that can just be like the really painful side of projection. And that I think in the physics of things, like coming from that wanter place, from this never enough sort of unsatisfied place, like pushes away the opportunity to see real people for who they really are, and for the real lover in me to gauge and understand what I could be attracted to that would be much more nourishing for me. Anyway, this was going to be like a much sexier podcast in my mind, but I think it's just that. I think, it's never just you. And, if you're not projecting onto someone, then you can fucking get that thing by hooking up with someone. And there are positive kinds of attraction, but like, be conscious of that shit. And there's a really negative side of attraction that comes when we come from our like super wanter, never enough, alone, always alone, unsatisfied place. All right, y'all. I hope wherever you are, it's fucking sunny and not raining in mid-May like it is here in Portland. But at least the dogs are out and having fun. And I just like fucking hope you're having fun figuring out what you're attracted to out there. Or whatever. All right. Mwah. So much love. This was going to be like a much sexier podcast in my mind.